Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in for our ongoing coverage on the lead up to CEDIA Expo. Today, I'm seated with Jeff Shaw of NICE to chat a little bit about the state of smart homes and what they have planned for the show this year. So, Jeff, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Nick. Yeah, again, my name is Jeff Shaw. I am a Chief Product Officer here at NICE. We do a variety of things, of course, one of which includes the CI channel, the brands that you love and know under NICE, that formerly Elan, Panamax, and Speakercraft brands, among others. But again, I'm excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Now, from your perspective, how has the smart home evolved over the last decade, and where do you think it's falling short today? Because we've actually had like a lot of people talking recently about kind of like where improvements can be made.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So from our perspective, the smart home, going back a decade, maybe the smart home was more, I won't call it a novelty, but it was not necessarily something that everybody was interested in doing. I mean, going back, even just outside the CI channel in general, but really the smart home was pretty, pretty early on a decade ago. There was not a lot of products out there. If you were into it, it was going to be something that was sort of a niche. And of course, over the last decade, it's really evolved into coming into everyday life, right? So in other words, if you're in your home, it's less of a way to, to have a cool thing you might want to show off to your friends, but it's really just part of your home. It's part of how you manage your home, from thermostats to lighting to media to client, all the things that you do in your home, including now appliances and health and safety, health and wellness. There's just a lot of, it's really ingrained into our homes. But where I think it's fallen short is it's more of a programmed home, and less of a home that evolves with the user. And so really we think that there's an opportunity for us in this business to make it less of a home that's programmed once and a set and forget, and really more evolves with the user. But also importantly, I think is to understand is that it also needs to be tailored more to the user versus tailored more to the installation as it is in time when it's first installed. So the user evolves, the home evolves, and how can we manage that as an industry? And that's where I think that we have a lot of improvement to make.
Now, what capabilities for like to that end are you guys with the Elan OS to like kind of get us towards that like smarter home?
Yeah, we actually have done a lot over the last 12 months and leading up to CEDIA even more now. We've made it easier to interact with the home. We've made it more intuitive to interact with the home. We've added a bunch of features, things like personalization, and really it's more deep personalization. It's not just customization of a user interface, but it's personalized to the user in the home. We've added a visual way of interacting with a home called floor plan. It's a kind of a visual control layer. We've added voice control. And then we have a new feature called action events, which makes it easier for the user to interact with their home based on things that are happening versus having to open an app or spend some time in the app to be able to do some things that's really more about getting an action, getting a notification, and being able to react to that on the fly very easily. So really the goal for us has been to make it easier for the user to interact with their home, so that it's not, sort of a one size fits all. It's more of a way that, depending on how that person wants to interact with the home or use their system, it can be tailored to different individuals and different customers and different installations.
So when you're introducing, because a lot of these just kind of sound like, making the smart home like a lot more intuitive when it comes to either intuitive in picking up on like what the people are doing and changing accordingly, or just intuitive in making it so that it's like easier for people to interact with the smart home.
Mm-hmm.
How do these added elements kind of change the way in which people interact with that?
Well, starting with personalization. So we have added features around personalization that use individualized controls, right? So when we talk about personalization, typically before now it's been you have a touch panel in the home, and the integrator will come in and personalize that touch panel with a different background, and it can also be obviously customized to the installation, depending on what things are installed. But we've added things like features that make it truly personalized. So using face recognition, using BLE, using geofencing to be able to have a user personalize their experience across all of the different user interfaces. So as an example, the user walks up to the touch panel in the home. Up until now, it's the same interface for everybody in the home. It doesn't change. But now with BLE, so you have a phone in your pocket, most people have a phone in their pocket, or face recognition, you're able to walk up to that touch panel and you are presented with your own user interface. So things like different things maybe not available to every user in the home. Let's say you want the kids. You don't want to give kids access to the climate controls, right? They're either going to turn it way up or way down, or maybe not every light in the house. So you present them with a user interface on that touch panel based on who they are, and they can only control the things that you allow them to control. You might have a super user that might be able to see everything, right? So you can tailor that touch panel in the home similar to the way you would tailor someone's phone in their pocket, but now it's completely personalized to that user. So we've combined, again, it's multi-factor authentication, so it may not just be face or just phone, right? You could walk up to the panel with someone's phone and you could spoof the panel, making it think it's somebody because it's got that phone. But now with the face recognition and the phone, you add two factors to be able to really personalize that system. And it's not meant to be a secure system from the standpoint of password or password encoded. It's really more personalization for the homeowners. If they're in your home, they're probably able to use your system. But you can move that even to a commercial space where you have different people in, let's say it's a bar restaurant, and you want to give different users the ability to do different things. The manager can have access to all the systems in the bar or the restaurant, but maybe the bar back can only maybe change the lighting in the area, or maybe not even lighting for that user, but maybe they can change what's on the different displays around the restaurant. Or just you can tailor what that user can do based on who they are, and that we think is really important, right? That's where the one size fits all that's typical to a smart home system kind of goes away, and it really depends on now the user. So it's more secure and it's more intuitive, and it really feels like magic when you walk up to a touch panel and it changes based on who you are. It's pretty cool.
Now, how do those layers of context change the way like voice control works? Because like you guys have been doing voice control with some of your stuff, and it's definitely become like a major aspect of the smart home system nowadays.
Yeah, so that just goes back to tailoring the system to the user, right? So it's not everybody's going to want voice control. Not everybody might want, personalization, but it's just another way we help the user interact with the system in the way they might want to. And so our system being contextually aware, what that means is that the system, depending on where you are in the home and depending on what user interface you're talking to, it knows where you are in that property. So for example, when you're in a room, let's say you're in the living room and you don't, typical voice assistants, you might have to remember the name of the device, turn on whatever it is, and remember the name of the device, and you can't really remember. But because the system knows where you are in the house, you can say simply, turn on the lights. It knows you're in the living room, so it turns on the living room lights. You can even go a little deeper than that. You can say, turn on the ceiling lights, and it knows you're in the living room, and it only turns on the ceiling lights in the living room, or turn on the lamps. But you can also say things like turn on the lights in the kitchen. So you can use those systems based on the rooms and based on the house versus having to remember the name of the device. And in the same way, you can start media control. You can say play, and you can name a playlist, and it'll play in the room that you're in. Or you can alternatively say, play whatever that playlist is in a different area of the house. But you just know it's the backyard, it's the bedroom, it's the living room. So it's a lot more intuitive because the system knows the rooms and it knows the type of device or the type of system you're trying to use. So it makes it much easier and using natural language versus having to remember specific commands or specific things that you might have to say. And you can say it in different ways. You don't have to say it exactly the same way every time. The system can interpret what you're saying and say it and act on that command based on what it thinks you're trying to accomplish.
Now, going back to something that you had mentioned earlier, because you had been talking about kind of like, one of the updates you recently added was this idea of like a full floor plan of the smart
Mhm.
home. Could you give us like a walkthrough of just
Yeah.
all that entails?
That's a pretty cool system that we introduced last year, and of course we're adding on to it more this year. But what you do is you take a lidar enabled phone, so using lidar, and you can map out an entire house room by room. It'll map out where your furniture is. It'll map out where your doors and windows are. And it's really just walk around the hunt, and you can do it in minutes. It's not very hard to do. You walk around and you can, in minutes, map out an entire property, or room by room. It might take minutes. It might take a little longer if you have a larger property, but allows you to then you have a visual representation of that property from a top-down view. So now what you can do is you can add lighting loads to those different rooms. So you can look down onto let's say the first floor of a house. You can do it by floor as well. And you can see what lights are on, and you can tap and turn lights off or turn lights on based on different parts of the room or different parts of the house. But you can also see cameras. So if there's motion events in a particular corner of a house where you have a camera, if that view is on the screen, you can have it automatically pull up that camera view and show you what's happening in that view. And further, you can even, if you wanted to, you could set this up so that if there's motion on a camera, it'll take that view and it'll put it up on a screen, and it'll automatically show you visually what's happening in the house. And so, again, giving you a different way to interact with the home. Some people might want to do it more visually, and that's a way that they can do that. So you can control media that way now coming up at CEDIA this year. You can look at cameras, you can turn lights on and off, you can set thermostats in different zones. Again, it's a different way to personalize or customize the way the user interacts with their home.
Now, speaking of customizations, another thing that Nice has is the action events. And so I was wondering
Yes,
if you could go a little bit more into detail what those are for
absolutely,
clients.
yeah. So there are a lot of good examples around that. So a lot of times we'll get a notification of something that's happening on the property or in the home. And typically it's just a notification. You see what that notification is, and maybe you might do something about that. You might open up the app and then go react to that notification. We've introduced action events that it's a way for you to get notified of something that's happening. And then you can then, from that event, it brings a pop-up and you can do something about it. So for example, there's a few really cool examples. One example is the garage door. If the garage door is open for more than 30 minutes, send you notification. That's pretty basic. That's nothing new. But from that action, I can just close the door. I don't have to open the app, navigate to the place where I would do that, and then close the garage door from there. I can do it right there from the notification. But another kind of cool example is, if you've got different people, we go back to the users in the home. If we are using geofencing along with BLE, we can know if all users have left the home, right? So we know there's no more phones in the house. Everybody's gone from the house. But it also can know that either the alarm wasn't set or the home was not set into away mode. So it can notify you, hey, we noticed that everybody left the house, but your home is still in home mode, or your home is still not armed. And right there from the app, you can say, oh, right, thanks for reminding me. Boom, I just tap a button here and it arms the alarm system, or it puts the home into away mode, which can also obviously alarm the alarm system. So it's a way for people to interact and know. It's back to kind of combining the personalization and the user-based control and knowing who's in the home, and then also how far away they are from the home. So using geofencing, we can know within a certain number of levels where people are away from their home based on their phone using geofencing. So we can know if you're 500 feet from the home, or if you're just outside, maybe you're just in the driveway. We don't want to notify you if you're just in the driveway, but if you've left a certain perimeter, then I can be notified that I'm this far away from the home, and now I can actually be notified that the alarm wasn't set. So really customizable, again, based on users. Then you can customize if it's all users or certain users. It's completely deeply personalizable.
Wow. Now, looking, because you guys had mentioned this like in your own stuff. Like we have talked to you in prior times, talking about like what the future of the smart home looks like. And I think
Mhm.
the thing that everybody is pointing for, especially now with the introduction of AI that's getting put into the smart home sphere, is this idea that homes are going to be able to kind of like intelligently anticipate these smart home automations that are
Mhm.
going to benefit the user. How do you view that evolution of the smart home?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that's an area where we're spending a lot of time on. So we've started that process of thinking towards that and moving towards that with the geofencing and the personalization, using BLE to know where people are in the home. So that's a really important thing to understand is things like automations, and we'll call them automations because up until now they haven't been automations, right? They've been programmed events. Now we're talking about automations. You want to be able to smartly do automations. You need to know who's in the home. You need to know maybe where they are in the home, and then you can make suggestions based around that. But the thing that's really important to notice is, a home, when a smart home is installed, you keep in mind that this is day one. The smart home is installed. The integrator sits down with the homeowner, sits down with the family, and they decide what things they want the home to do, what things they want the home to be. So this is day one. Now imagine, day 700, you're now a couple of years later. A lot of things have evolved in those people's lives, right? Maybe the children are now teenagers. Maybe somebody's job has changed. So things that you have programmed 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago even, aren't relevant to that homeowner anymore. And so they don't either use those controls or those programming events, or they actually become kind of annoying, right? If you've got an event that's happening that you don't really want it to happen anymore, and you've got to go stop it every time. So what we see is a way to take the home and have it evolve with the user, with the homeowners, so that over time that home can either just evolve with the homeowner based on things that are happening. So now let's say the home knows that you came home every day at 5 o'clock because it knows your phone, it knows who you are, it knows your face, it knows things about you, and it recognizes that it's noticing that, and it might make suggestions based on the new things that are happening in the home. And same thing with, let's say you've got teenagers in the home, right? They were elementary school age kids, and the home was programmed, but over time their lives have changed. So now they're coming home at different times of the day, or they're doing things at different, they're turning on a different playlist every day than they might have played 2 or 3 years ago. So the home will understand and learn from what's happening in the home and either make suggestions. For us, we see it as making suggestions because we don't want to be creepy and make changes to the home without the homeowner knowing it's happening. That's a little weird. But making suggestions to the homeowner and allowing them to be still in control, or even further, we see a way to maybe we make suggestions to the dealer, right? So the integrator now has the ability to go in and say, hey, the system knows that your life is, I think you're doing, we don't want to be creepy about it, right? We don't want to make sure that the homeowner doesn't think that somebody's watching what's happening in the home, but the system can make suggestions to the dealer, and then the dealer can make those changes and really help the homeowner do that. But we also feel it's very important over time. If you look at talking about your first question about how the system has evolved over time, we see that 10 years ago, again, it was a little more niche, and it's evolved over time. More and more people are kind of getting into it. It's becoming more part of our lives. And in the CI channel, you kind of relied on the dealer, the integrator to do everything, even to the point of your lighting scenes and your any different events that you might set up. But we've noticed over time that homeowners they're becoming more savvy. They understand their homes a little better, their smart home. So they might want to make changes to their system themselves. So we're also introducing this here at CEDIA, the ability for the homeowner to make some changes when it comes to scenes and programming their system a little bit. And I wouldn't say programming because we want to make sure the dealer obviously does all that programming, but it gives a little bit more control to the homeowner to be able to program some events for themselves around things that might be happening in the home. So again, it's that evolution of, well, my life was different 2 years ago. I don't need that automation or that event mapper anymore. I need this thing now to change. So we're giving a little more control. But again, over time, we see that happening more automatically. So the right now it's evolving. It's helping the homeowner evolve it, but eventually we want to make it so that the system itself is suggesting those changes, and the homeowner just doesn't have to do anything. It's seamless. If they agree to that change, they just say yes, and it does it.
Now, I'm assuming, minus what we're talking about right now, where it's like this is all kind of like future forward thinking stuff. A lot of the stuff that you've talked about recently, as far as like the geofencing, the personalization, all that stuff. This is stuff that like integrators, if they visit you guys at CEDIA Expo, they're going to be able to like kind of tool around with and just kind of see how it all works, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have this will all be demonstrated at CEDIA. We're doing this now. Again, this is laying the foundation. These are the pieces that we need to lay the foundation for what we see as the future. So this is where it starts, is knowing the things we want to know about the home. But absolutely, CEDIA will have all this laid out, the geofencing and the voice control and the floor plan, all the stuff that I've talked about. We're going to demonstrate this at CEDIA. We're doing training events at CEDIA as well to help dealers understand and how to program these things, or how to use these things. And so, yeah, it's a great opportunity for dealers to come visit us and see all the things that we have, all the exciting things that we're doing.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to stopping by your booth while I'm at the show. Jeff, I want to say thanks again for taking the time to sit down with us. And like I said, I look forward to being able to stop by to see all the stuff that you guys got going on.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Appreciate the time.